and welcome to the free video series which will help you for your next trip to Paris, Italy and Stanfield, and I'm so happy to see you here. And this video series is preparing you to have an easier time when you go to Paris and when you have to speak French in order to, I guess, manage first and then to really enjoy, to immerse yourself into the culture. This is the second video of the series, and in the first video I gave you 4 secrets that will help you become bilingual faster. In today's video I'm going to give you 5 tools to remove overwhelm when you're trying to learn French. The first step is to know why you want to learn French in the first place. There is always a reason why someone starts to learn French, and that can be to go in a trip to Paris, that can be to make friends who speak French, that may be, I don't know, to get a better job, to make more money, to find love. And they start learning French, and what happens is that as time goes and they keep learning, and it becomes a little hard, and the focus from the goal itself, from the initial I guess motive, the why, shifted to, well, now I started to learn French and now I should learn French, I should know French, I should finish what I started. And while that is you know, a very valid reason to continue because you want to finish what you started, it's not always something that keeps you motivated. It's not something that helps you be excited and really looking forward to, you know, learn French. So my point is that you should always think every day if you can, but every so often for sure, think about the initial reason. Why did you start learning French in the first place? Why not, I guess, I don't know, German or Spanish or another language? Why French? Really, why French? And you have to go to the you know, the very intimate reasons, because the more intimate reason, the more intimate the reason is, I guess the more it sticks with us, right? The, you know, more organic, and it's more, it gives us quite a kick. So always remember to think back and to remember, why did you start to learn French in the first place? French should never ever be the main reason why you learn French. You're not a linguist, and even if you are a linguist, you have to think back, or you're a linguist, well, I want to make more money, or I want to create a career, or I want to help people, or I want to, whatever it is that is the reason that started you in the first place, which we usually forget. That is what we should think about more and more often. And don't be ashamed finding love, or you know, things like that, very intimate, or nothing to be ashamed of. If anything, you know, they're more human. More people you're gonna relate to more people, I guess. So another tool to overcome overwhelm when you learn French is to relax. Language learning is something very physical, just like singing. Singing is compared to weightlifting, and it is because it involves the diaphragm, which is one of the main, one of the stronger muscles of the body, and because it's linked to the breath. Well, so is a language learning. Because it expresses emotions, a language is very organic. And so if you are tense, what's going to happen is that it's going to affect your accent, it's going to affect your pronunciation, it's going to affect the speed of remembering the words, and grammar and verb conjugation and all those things that we have to think about. If you are tense and you're not relaxed, the odds are that you're gonna forget many things in the middle of conversation. Plus, you're not gonna express yourself. So when you don't express yourself, guess what? You're not happy. You don't make conversation. And again, if going back to the first point, if the first tool, if you have a very personal reason why you're learning this language and you immersing yourself in this culture in the first place, not being relaxed and not being yourself doesn't really help fulfilling that particular reason in the first place. The third tool will be, for what I'm concerned, for what I think, deep practice. What you can learn a lot about deep practice from a book called The Talent Code, which I recommend to everybody who works with me. The Talent Code is written by Daniel Coyle, and it was a bestseller. And that book explains how talent is really a numbers game. What we call talent really is an fascination that we are born with. So we are born with a certain inclination to get fascinated by something. So some people get fascinated by beautiful things, others by math, others by physical sports. What happens is that as we grow up, and actually when we were very little, we open our eyes and we get fascinated by these particular things that, I don't know, comes from the stars. But then what happens is that our brain practices subconsciously, because we're so fascinated and we're doing that over and over and over again. And that is what we perceive as talent. So when we see a child singing or playing or doing something at a very young age, we call it talent. They're born with that particular talent. But that's not so much talent as it is practicing and repeating in their heads the performing of that particular skill. So really it is about skill so much, not so much about talent. So talent equals really skill, because you can't be talented if you don't actually do it, if you don't show that you do it. So that kinds of changes shifts a little bit the perception and belief system, that whether if you're not born with something, if you didn't start something at a very young age, that means you'll never do it. It's not so true. It's still about the repeats. It's about how many times you're repeating and doing it over and over again, something. And so that being said, for instance, Anthony Hopkins, he's running his lines 250 times. It's Anthony Hopkins, right? He's a huge star. It's a high performer, right? So everybody who ever did something to actually manifest in a way their talent, so to show skill, they all did through practice, through repeats. And just as in gym, repeats, you do it over and over again as many times as needed until you really can perform a specific task. So it works with anything else, including languages, so French or singing or dancing or anything that it is that it fascinates you. So obviously if you're watching this video, French fascinates you. So don't ever think that it is too late to learn something, or to learn French, or to become bilingual, or to become fluent, or to master the accent, or anything else regarding this language. You can always do it. And there's also something that I teach which is called the sweet spot of the speed, which is deep practice really is about numbers, but it is also about the speed. The slower you can practice, the faster, the less repeats you're gonna need. So the sweet spot is to find the place where, or the speed, which is not too fast and not too slow, but that actually helps the brain to absorb the fastest. It is something that comes with practice and again repeats, but it's something to look for. So if you're not aware that such a thing exists, it's harder to actually master it. So this would be one of the very important tools that I think everybody can benefit from. The fourth tool would be listening, and one of the techniques that I use is called committed impulse, and it is about listening as if you've never heard before. So we always want to listen and repeat and learn while comparing with what we already know. But this way we actually keep in place techniques that don't work anymore, because if you're watching this video, that means that some techniques, some learning techniques don't work anymore. Otherwise you would work on your own and you wouldn't need to, anybody else to help you. So listening is a skill that we all think we have, but most of us compare with what we already know. When we learn something new, and especially when we learn pronunciation, which is complete listening, as you don't need to make anything logical when you listen for a pattern. It's just a pattern. You just have to hear it, to see it. In order to see it, not with your eyes, but with your mind's eye, then you really have to listen. In order to listen right, as in like to properly, purely listen, that means that you have to kind of take away your brain, as in that it's not useful, and actually it's damaging to the process of listening. So when you have enough focus on just to hear the sounds, and I always recommend to look to hear the silence between the sounds. So when you really hear the sounds between the sounds, then you are really listening. And so the brain does its job. You don't have to invite your brain to understand. You don't have to invite your brain to compare with other patterns or things it knows before already. You don't have to do any of these things. That's its function, and it does it regardless of your intention. But if the brain doesn't actually have a new pattern, a new information, which comes only through clear, pure listening, then it's not going to take on the new information. It's always going to refer back to the known information, and most likely it's going to go use that old information because it's been there for a while, which means that is already in the system, and so it's easier to access. In order to the definition of insanity is that to do the same thing over and over again and expect a new result or a new outcome, right? So in order to change things so that you make it work better for you, you just have to allow yourself to hear and to hear new information without referring or resorting to comparison with any old information that you already have. So committed impulse is a technique that I use in order to help you really listen, so that you allow new information, pure new information, to come into your system, so that you don't get or stay stuck with old patterns, old habits, and I guess old pronunciation, whatever it is that applies to French. And the fifth tool that I recommend is sense memory. That works especially in pronunciation. And pronunciation, why am I focusing on it so much? Well, I think it's because I noticed that it is actually one of the elements that are stopping people from pursuing taking on French in the first place. They start and then they give up because it's so hard to master pronunciation of a foreign language. It's actually very hard. So sense memory is when we say something and instead of focusing on hearing it, yes, we have to hear it, but instead of actually focusing only on that, we focus on what it is that we feel in our mouth that happens, that what it is that we actually feel while we say those words. And of course, when you're having someone as a guide, and this is me in my program, my programs, you'll have some guide as to, okay, what pronunciation was right, what pronunciation was wrong. I must say that there are a lot of schools out there that recommend you to look in the mirror to see how the mouth shapes and everything, which is very wrong, because first of all, when we look in the mirror, we become all self-conscious. We start counting lines and remembering, oh, we look this way, or haircut or stuff like that. So it's really not a good thing. And also, when you speak to someone in conversation, you don't have a mirror in front of you to actually see how you're pronouncing when you're making conversation at the coffee. So, but you do have your mouth and what feels in your mouth, unless you're eating and then you'll have it changed, or you're drinking something or smoking. But other than that, it's pretty easy if you really want to have control over what it is that you do in your, with your mouth, with pronunciation, to control that and use the sense memory to, for pronunciation. But the thing is too, don't confuse muscle memory with sense memory. Muscle memory is when you make you dial, let's say you dial a phone number and you can't quite remember the number, but your finger knows. That's muscle memory, because the muscles they know where to go. That is after the sense memory. That's the next step. The muscle memory is the next step of the sense memory. Sense memory is what it sounds like. It's about senses. It's about, if you can use the smell, of course, the touch in the mouth, smell, touch, every other senses, hearing, see, sight, and everything that helps you in order to register the right movement that you need in order to produce a certain sound and, the right speech. And that works, when you start learning French in the first place as like the standard French. But then, for instance, if you want to take on an accent, so for instance like Quebec French, and so you can take on their accent, and that works with the sense memory, it's just the same way. And or I don't know, other French accents that you would be fascinated by. So don't disregard that. It's really important, and please don't look in the mirror, because it's only gonna make you unhappy. I hope that you enjoyed the 5 steps that you learned here, and that you were not too shocked by the ones you've never heard before. If you will take away one thing, just one thing, that would be to find out why it is that you wanted to learn French in the first place. It would help you continue on this path even when the walk gets harder. So in the third and last video of this series, I will talk about the fat cells of your ears. And I'll give you a mind-blowing gift. I'm so excited to have this opportunity. And so please don't miss out, and come back in another couple of days. À bientôt et au revoir.